I wanted to talk today about a really troubling case that happened in the Netherlands over the last fortnight. I want to start first with, what is the Netherlands' view of euthanasia? So I'm just reading from the Wikipedia page here. The legal debate concerning euthanasia in the Netherlands took off with the Postma case in 1973, concerning a physician who had facilitated the death of her mother following repeated explicit requests for euthanasia. While the physician was convicted, the court's judgment set out criteria when a doctor would not be required to keep a patient alive, contrary to their will. This set of criteria was formalised in the course of a number of court cases during the 1980s. Termination of Life Request and Assisted Suicide Review Procedures Act took effect on the 1st of April 2002. It legalises euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide in very specific cases, under very specific circumstances. The law was proposed by Els Borst, the D66 Minister of Health. The procedures codified in the law had been a convention of the Dutch medical community for over 20 years. So in other words, even prior to the law coming in, the medical fraternity in Holland had taken upon themselves to euthanize people whether it was the law or not. This is a very important point. I'll read on. The law allows Medical Review Board to suspend prosecution of doctors who performed euthanasia when each of the following conditions are fulfilled. And here are the conditions. The patient's suffering is unbearable, with no prospect of improvement. The patient's request for euthanasia must be voluntary and persist over time. The request cannot be granted under the influence of others, psychological illness, or drugs. The patient must be fully aware of his/her condition, prospects, and options. There must be a consultation with at least one other independent doctor who needs to confirm the conditions mentioned above. The death must be carried out in a medically appropriate fashion by the doctor or patient, and the doctor must be present. And the patient is at least 12 years old. Patients between 12 and 16 years of age require the consent of their parents. Now, for those of you who might be supportive of euthanasia, or at least indifferent to it, then consider this following case. So this article comes out of The Independent, and there'll be a link in the description. Panel clears Dutch doctor who asked family to hold patient down as she carried out euthanasia procedure. Doctor who asked an elderly patient's family to hold her down while she administered a fatal drug dose has been cleared of Holland's euthanasia laws. Well, so much for our safeguards. Mail Online reported that the patient fought desperately in an attempt not to be killed. Jacob Kudstam, chairman of the Regional Review Committee, which considered the case, said, "I'm convinced the doctor acted in good faith, and we would like to see more clarity on how such laws are handled in the future." But how is this possible? Mr. Kudstam, there are safeguards at law already. You do not need any more clarity. You are making up the law as you go along. This is no longer the rule of law. This is a woman who was held down and euthanized against her will. To the case notes, the woman, who lived in a nursing home, showed signs of fear and anger. Well, that's perfectly natural. She had dementia. She would also wander around the premises at night. What a pest. What a pest. The end came when the doctor put a soporific into her coffee before administering a lethal injection. But as the doctor tried to administer the injection, she began to struggle, and the doctor had to seek the family's help to complete the procedure. I would struggle too if you try and kill me. Do we remember all those safeguards we read at the start of this video? It sounded wonderful, didn't it? Now, this is an important issue because, yeah, Holland has some appalling laws, and apparently the doctors are just allowed to do whatever they feel like. But euthanasia is also an issue in many other countries. Canada, under the uber-liberal Justin Trudeau, New Zealand, Victoria in Australia, New South Wales, most of the states in Australia are considering their own euthanasia laws. After World War II, there was a great uncovering of the crimes of the Nazi people. And one wonders where the roots of the Holocaust had started. Well, it all started with Axion T4, which was named after Tiergartenstrasse number 4. There's an article on Wikipedia about it, and you can read it all for yourself. But it's quite terrible, and what they were doing was euthanizing disabled people. This is actually a poster from those times. Now, I know it's in German, and my German is not very good, so I'm hoping someone will be able to correct me. But what it essentially says is 60,000 Deutsche Marks. Kostet dieser Erbkranke die Volksgemeinschaft Lebenszeit. So in other words, it costs this sick person costs the German people our living wages. The Volksgenoff, das ist auch dein Geld. That is, it's also our money. So in other words, it's sad, but look at this guy who obviously has cerebral palsy, with the loving doctor in his hand on the shoulder, caring for him, no doubt. But at the end of the day, this poster is to put the disabled to death. And that's what happened in number 4, Tiergartenstrasse. I hope someone with German puts it in comment. I'd really like a better interpretation of this poster, even though its meaning is obvious to me. Related development. This story from France, you would laugh if you weren't crying. French TV bans advert with smiling Down syndrome children as it might, quote, disturb women who've had an abortion. So in other words, we're not allowed to show on this channel children who are smiling, and most Down syndrome people are happy souls, but we're not allowed to show them smiling because so many French women have aborted Down syndrome children. So I shall post media reports into the description at the bottom of this video. But I just want you to be aware that the silent creep of anti-life forces goes on. Some have said in the United States that the next generation is a pro-life generation. One can only hope so, because the darkness that seems to surround this eugenics program that's being carried out in all of the Western world is really the lowest form of human respect for life. Anyway, that's enough for today's episode. I will put as much of the resources as I can into the description, and stay positive, and I'll see you next video.
Change your name, say my name, nothing will stand, sick of